I love making games for the GMTK Game Jam, from a unique puzzle platformer where the world moves around you, to a football game with superliminal physics and a role reverse cut the rope where you are the rope. This year though, things are going to be significantly harder than ever because after graduating and getting a job, I now have about 2 seconds a day to actually work on this and make a game with the theme of...
Oh, this is a countdown? Or is this the actual theme? Hold on. No, this must be the countdown. No, I literally just said it. Oh my god, countdown. Countdown. Seriously, Mark, I'm worried about running out of time when you give me the theme of countdown. Okay, well now I'm panicked. This is Countdown Panic, a puzzle game with a deceptively simple objective. You need to move your little guy here from the start to the end flag. No big deal, right? Well, it wouldn't be, if not for the fact that I've broken into your home and removed the arrow keys from your keyboard and given them the ability to jump around the screen instead. Why is this a problem? So see the big timer here? Every time it reaches 0, it's going to press a key for you in whatever direction is selected. This can result in some pretty painful steps if it's going in the wrong direction, so your only way to stop this from happening is to quickly find the direction you actually want and click on it. As the theme of the game was countdown, I think let's probably start there, but then we'll come back to how we made the fake 3D stepping in a 2D world, making sure they step randomly around but also staying within the visible areas of the screen, how these little guys connect to the countdown that's ticking and updating the clock, and also then how this clock is able to communicate with the game we're actually playing to try and navigate the maze. Okay. Here we go. So I started by making a simple clock that just ticks every single second. And when this clock ticks, it sends a signal to the countdown screen. This countdown goes down by 1 every tick it receives from the clock until it hits 0, at which point it's going to send its own new command out to the command center that just says, hey, do something please. And it resets itself back to 3 in order to come down again and do it again next time. Now the really clever part that ties the whole game together is this command center. It's kind of acting as the connection between the annoying silly guys walking around with the command it wants to send, and also then bridges that to the game that it wants to send it to. And of course also how often we want to send that command. Now the reason this is so awesome is that we could swap any of the 3 sides of this into anything else and it would work perfectly. If I want the clock to tick down on the beat of music instead of every second, that's easy. Want to control the action by having to nod your face in the right direction instead of clicking on a up, down, left, right? Sure. And the real kicker is that we can also just change what mini game here we're sending the command to. Now right now it's just the maze game, but it could just as easily be any other game we can make that includes regular keyboard input. Even my original GMTK platformer, we could just plug it in. It's awful to play this way, but you could if you wanted to. But of course this means we need some way to be able to change what this minigame is. And there's a really cool secret here that I've kind of hidden from you right now. And that's that this game isn't even here. It's actually all the way over there. What? So the maze is actually its own completely independent minigame. It's literally in its own completely separate scene from the countdown stuff, which is why we can just plug in any game we want. But obviously when we open the scene to play it, it's just the whole screen of the game. So how on earth do we put this inside the actual countdown thing? This is thanks to a really cool Unity trick called render textures. So by default we have a camera in our scene that we can just move around, see whatever we want, and that's displayed to the screen. This is because we can see the output of the camera is currently set to nothing, so kind of by default it's just put on the screen. But much like the command control center we've been working on, there's other things we can plug the output of the camera into. For example, why not drag and drop it onto this image here, and now all of a sudden we can see the image has the camera on it. And by adding the image to the controller scene, we can move the image around however we want, and it contains the output of the game. We can go even further than this and be really silly and also just rotate around using a command that can just completely change how the game looks and kind of breaks everything, but it's kind of interesting. Maybe even grow and shrink it too to make the game kind of more difficult or more interesting if you do something wrong. Unfortunately, I did run out of time to implement stuff like this, but I really like how flexible the approach is, and we can kind of do really anything. With all this plugging things into and out of other things, it kind of felt like a Raspberry Pi project a little bit to me, with all the clocks and the wires and the signals going between them. So I really want to lean into this aesthetic when I'm making the art for the game. I started by making a 7-segment display with the digits 0 to 3, and I think that has just like a really nice retro feel. These things are normally put onto some kind of circuit board, so I made one of those too. It's kind of gold and blue, and it does feel a little bit more professional, dare I say, than I actually expected. I think it turned out really good. And then I even noticed that the original boards have some engravings on with like names and logos and stuff on the board. So of course, naturally, I etched my own name and face into a board in gold. And that did feel pretty cool. Of course now though, if this 7-segment display and these boards and then the game are like their individual components, we need something that we can plug them all into to put them together. And I suddenly got the thought of these like white breadboard thingies that I had back in school for practicing wiring circuits up with easy slots to put everything in. I found this image that I based my design on, and also the mat in the background. I kind of did this by accident, but I really like the color of this with the combinations of all the different whites and the greens and stuff like that. So I remade that too. Doing all this art though did take a lot longer than I expected. I really did not mean to eat up an entire day doing all of this, but yeah, I normally
just do like simple colors and blocks and shapes and not really do any art at all. So I wanted to really push myself and try and learn something new for this game jam. Was it worth a whole day? No. It doesn't matter how amazing it was. Okay, but we haven't even talked about my favorite part of the visuals though. That's this awesome little hand that follows the mouse and makes interacting with the buttons just so much more fun. I found myself just clicking around for no reason at all other than it just being so satisfying, which wasn't good for my productivity, as making this hands did also just take another one of the days I have. But luckily it also wasn't good for my sanity either, because it ended up being deceptively difficult to make due to the evilness of shadows. You see, I had to split the hand into 3 different parts: the hand part, the arm, and the shirt. This was for 2 reasons: so I can move them independently to get that kind of clicking animation, and also to colour more differently randomly every time we play the game. The problem with this is that when I added the transparent version for them for the shadows, the transparencies all overlap and it just looked absolutely terrible. I spent ages trying to research different methods of drawing we could use, or shaders or something for this, before remembering that I have no idea how to write shaders whatsoever. So here's my little clever, hacky, stupid way around this, which at least works. If we simplify the shadows to just this one rectangle, then obviously there's no overlapping anymore, but it's just a boring rectangle shape, so we can hopefully do a little better than that. Unity has a sprite mask system that lets you say that a sprite should only be visible when it's inside a mask. So instead of the arm pieces being sprites, we can just make them masks that reveal this rectangle shadow underneath it. I still think this is pretty silly and there must be a better way of doing it, but it works and it was quick, so it's actually the best way of doing it as far as I'm concerned right now. You might have noticed that I also randomized the color of most things in this game every time you play it, mainly the grid color, the body of the player, and this hand. So I thought this would just be kind of fun to add some replayability and interest to the game, but doing this actually ended up being the only reason I could finish the entire game and make any levels before the deadline. Somehow I'm not joking. I know that seems absolutely insane, but I'm being dead serious. This saved the whole project. It's all due to how I define the random colors using this color palette here, and it kind of relates to this other random image, which we'll come back to later, because who cares if we can't make any levels if we've got no way to change the direction we actually want to move in to navigate them. For that, we're going to need to finally make the stepping little command guys, which I've been really excited for. Now, as we discussed earlier, the point of this system is really just to do the how we change the command that happens on the countdown hitting 0 kind of system. And when I was planning out the idea, I thought maybe they could just be buttons that you can drag around the screen or something, but I realized you could just arrange them all like this and it made the game pretty easy. I also tried a similar system, but every time a command is used, it gets destroyed, revealing this kind of broken heart behind it. Now this command will just damage the player, the same as if you move onto a spike. This means you can't just sit there with the direction set, and instead you need to find it every time and click on it every 3 seconds. Hello, quickly, editor me. I made a huge mistake during the game jam, and I never actually made that system. I just imagined it in my head with the little diagrams and just thought it would be too difficult and binned it and threw it away and moved on too quickly. I just remade it now so I can make the footage that I just showed you, and oh my god, just play the clip. Oh my. For the first time in 5 years, I felt the need to come back and change things afterwards and add this little addendum because, oh my god, this is literally it. So if true, this is just going to control if we move the pieces around. Right, okay, so we're going to move the pieces around. And then also, the only other change, the only other thing we need to do, right, is in this countdown action, is when the countdown's over and we're doing the game action, so typically it would be whatever the thing was that was there, say right for example, the only change we need to make is to just destroy the current one. If it exists, if there was one there already, we just destroy it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines of code completely made the game so much better, and I'm so mad I didn't do this during the jam. I actually can't believe it. That just goes to say what tiredness is like. So look, now when you go right, it gets destroyed. We instantly get this heart back, which isn't even in the current game, and now you start losing life. We need to go right. Okay, and now we need to go right again. Oh my god. This is so much more chaotic. I'm so much more interacting into what's going on. I have to constantly look around the screen. I feel like this would get much more engaging. The player velocity, whatever the hell I called it, is so much higher. I just lost health again because I missed it. Gotta go up. My bad. And this is so much better, damn it! I think this genuinely solves some of the huge problems that I try and discuss about later. I mentioned the velocity thing earlier, so look out for that in a second bit, but oh my god, like seriously. But I thought it made the first level a bit too difficult, and I'll explain why later, but for now I'm just going to keep looking for that Goldilocks zone where the difficulty is just right. This is where I settled the command persisting, so making it a bit easier, but the commands themselves that you need to click on, moving around to make it a bit more difficult for you to find them when you need to change. It's also a little bit of a time saving trick because we're on a crunch, and I know for a fact I'm going to need the little guy that's in the maze to be moving around and jumping anyway, so we can just use the exact same thing. At this point, I do have a small confession to make. And I do feel really bad about it. But okay, so a few months ago I made these little guys that I called blankies. You might notice they look a little similar. The rules of the jam say it's okay to reuse assets I've made before, and at least I did still make them myself and they're not just from the asset store, which even if they were, would still be completely okay. But something about it just feels like icky and cheating to me because I just haven't done it before. However, I think something that you have to remember if you feel bad about this too is that we're really out of time, and if I don't do this, then there's just not going to be any game at all. I can declare that I did this in my submission page, so it's not like I'm trying to get away with it. I don't really see how it's any different to having like a team, and some teams have like 6 people on that are working on it 24/7 without sleeping, and clearly doing far more than I could ever do by myself. Oh yeah, and number 4, this is the worst one. So in the rush of the jam, I couldn't even find the source code for these little guys anyway. I only had this visual that I'd made before, so I'm gonna have to remake them anyway. Now you might not believe me at first, but what if I told you that these guys are actually just moving in a straight line, a completely straight line? I wouldn't believe me either, but here's a look in the debug view. Now while the path is broken down into steps, it's still in a completely straight line. So how do we add this 3D effect? It's actually really simple. To see why, let's take a look at one of my favorite 3D games ever, Super Mario Odyssey. And you can see when you jump, the shadow is right below you, almost as if the shadow is where Mario actually is, and the 3D model just kind of moves up and down above this point a bit. Okay, so back to the game, and let's just make it so that every step, which is some part of the total journey split into an equal chunk, we move the height up and back down again before the next step. So while the shadow stays completely still along this straight line that the object's actually moving in, the visual goes up and down. To get back to the original Blankies version I made, you can also make them wobble around every step too, but I don't have time for that right now, and we have a more important issue anyway. And that's that just by making them walk to a random position near them is not enough, because they can just walk right off screen, making it quite difficult to click on one of these commands when we need it. We need to somehow define a walkable area that they must stay with. I think a first step to this is just to try and keep them on the screen. That's not too hard. If the position we pick for them to move to on the x-axis is less than 0 or greater than 1920, then we know it must be off the screen, and the same thing with 1080p on the y-axis. And we can get around this by just randomly generating a new point until one of them is on the screen. This is okay, but I don't really like them getting so close to the edge of the screen, as they can kind of just be half off the screen if they're sat right at it. Okay, so how about we can shrink the border a bit for where is walkable. Say checking an extra 100 pixels on either side is also not allowed. This is already much better, but the more tricky problem is now coming to get us, and that's being that I don't really want them to be able to walk over the countdown area here, as in theory that's sticking up out of the breadboard and shouldn't really be on the table for them to be able to walk on. And arguably, we don't want them to be walk over the game either. Okay, actually maybe we do. It's going to be a bit chaotic and silly, but that is the whole point. Therefore we can check to see if a point is inside one of these exclude boxes too, and immediately know it's invalid. If we make it through all the exclude boxes, then we know we're outside all of those, so now we just need to check that we are inside at least one of the include boxes. If we get through all of this, then this point is just kind of stuck alongside the border here, and obviously we don't want those two, so we can reject it. I think this is all coming together really nicely, but of course all this stepping around and the countdown mean absolutely nothing if we finally don't go back and make the mazes for the maze guy to actually maze around. I'm definitely starting to panic though, again, as I check the clock to realise I spent so long on all the fun but unnecessary things. I literally only have about 3 hours left to make the game part of the game. Yeah, okay, that was a mistake. Luckily for us though, and you won't believe it, we've actually already written all the code we need to load in these levels, and I got so lucky. All we need to do to make these levels is draw them. So you remember the palette loading thing I did earlier for the hand, which I thought was a waste of time, but I said actually saved the whole game? So it turns out it's time to come back to that. Okay, and think about it, what are we doing when we're loading in this palette? We're taking a 2x11 image, looking at the center of each pixel to see what color it is, and assigning it a name in code to use later. Now if you squint a little bit, what is a grid-based level if not a 7x15 grid of pixels that each have a different thing assigned to them again? Don't see it? How about now? That's right, every single level is just an image. In fact, these tiny little image levels have been here the whole time, and they represent the layout for each one by one. We can then read these in with the same code as we're reading in the palette, but instead of saving what we see to a name for the color, we just spawn in the corresponding item that we want to put on the level. What's so amazing about this approach is that we can just keep adding and drawing more and more levels, and all we need to do to put them in the game is just add them as an image, which we obviously already know how to do. But I messed up big time with like the simplest part of level design ever, which kind of ruins everything. I was so stressed making these levels so quickly that I kind of forgot that this one especially will take a really long time. I only realized this when I read a comment about it on the game page after I'd submitted it. And they're totally right. Above all else, the game has to be fun, and I failed at the first hurdle here. Once you figured out the mechanic, you just kind of sit waiting and do nothing, which is not ideal. It's a cool idea maybe, but it's definitely not fun. Surprisingly though, in the end, I don't mind at all that the game's bad. I just care that there's a game for other people to play. At all. That might sound silly, but this was me trying to submit the game with about 30 minutes left before I had to catch a train. Oh my god. Cool, right, done. I haven't built in Unity 6 before. Oh my god, web. I don't have
Web build support. Oh my god. Is this installed? Web build support. Okay. Build profiles. Web. What do you mean it's not installed? Oh, maybe I have to close and open it again. Yeah, I can see web and macOS there now, so that's good. Why is it transparent? Seriously, I've had every problem. So I don't have a name. I need one right now. Countdown circuitry. Countdown panic. That's how I feel. Let's just press build and see what happens. The upload process is never easy. Something won't compile correctly, or something will look wrong in WebGL. It just always looks wrong in WebGL. Cannot build while it's importing. Okay, while it's doing that, I guess we can write more of the description. How to play. Don't get mad at me for the last level. Draft for now. Yeah, so do we have a build? Build? I'm just gonna build to the desktop, I guess. What I will do though, is submit to the jam now. Oh, I haven't even joined the jam? Are you kidding me? Countdown panic, there we go. Unity 1. Submit. Build completed. Oh, it just took 6 minutes. Nice, okay, edit project. Let's go. Done. Go! Go. Nice. Is that gonna just like crop it? I really hope not. Or it might not load. Sometimes they just never load. That is also... It loaded. And you can't see it. I think maybe if I just do that. Oh my god. I completely forgot to make it dynamic to the right resolution. But my time is legitimately over. I don't know. What happens if I just make this full screen? Oh my god. What the hell is that? Why is it completely broken? Huh? No! I spent so long making it look good, you can't even see it! I'm taking a screenshot just so I can be like, this is what it's meant to look like. God. What? Why are the colours so different when it's exported? What is going on? This, honestly, more than anything, makes me just like hate working. When the colours are just randomly different. Why? Screenshot. Why the screenshot's not visible? That's what's happened. That's what it looks like. That's all we need to do, is just make it scale. Okay, build. Build again. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna just start getting ready to leave and hope this builds by the time I'm back. Okay, cool. You can see I'm much more fresh now. I feel better. Still building though. Succeeded! Ooh, let's go. Oh, I need to compress it again. Whoops. No! I did not just do that. Please. That's just the wrong aspect ratio. I almost think it looked better before. Well, there it is. That's the problem. What do I need it to be? 960 by 540. Let's build again. Oh my god. So it actually works now.